Greetings chess friends, Robbie again, and I'm going to do a series of little short videos, primarily because I get very tired doing longer videos and I begin to lose my concentration. But we'll do another series of little videos on square strategy theory and looking at weak color complexes, how we can exploit them, how we can set them up and create them, and looking at the dynamics of the pieces in regard to these weak color complexes. Now, all the other positions we had prior to this in square strategy theory, the basics 1, there was already a weak color complex on the board, and we had to identify it and look for ways to exploit it. However, in this middle game position, the challenge is essentially to create a weak color complex, and we'll use the principles of square strategy theory in order to help us identify potential weak color complexes, and we'll look for moves that help us to create real weak color complexes. So please take a look at the position, look at it for as long as you need, and try to think of how we can exploit the position in order to create weak color complexes. So if you'd like to pause the video, do so now. Well, hopefully you paused the video and you had some time to think about this middle game position. Now, when we look at the base squares, we can see that this square here on f7 is particularly weak, being defended only by the king. Of course, our spider sense goes off, and we then take a look at the entire d5 color complex. And in doing so, we can see that not only is this weak here, but this pawn here is defending these two very important squares, the a6 square and the c6 square. And if we could find a way in order to exchange this pawn off or make it advance, then we can see that this entire color complex here will become weak. Now, knowing that, can you think of any candidate moves that would help us to exchange off or make this pawn here on c6 advance? And of course, the move a6 springs to mind, challenging the pawn immediately. Now, black has a choice. He can either take this pawn and accept an isolated and weak a7 pawn, or he can do as he does in the game and advance it to b6. And immediately our spider sense goes off, and we can see that we have created a weak color complex here. In terms of square strategy theory, it is of course an e4 strategy in the direction of d5, white squares. And we're going to be seeking, of course, to place our pieces on these white squares and attack the squares of the opposite colour. Now, can you think of any candidate moves that helps us to really take control of this complex, put pressure on this complex, occupy this complex? And of course, one of the first moves that springs to mind is bishop b5, taking control of the c6 square, occupying the colour complex and preparing to infiltrate it and come in to c6 itself. Black here castles, and of course we infiltrate the colour complex with our bishop. The rook is forced to run away, and now can you think of any other move that helps us to take control, put pressure on, or occupy this colour complex here? Of course, there's a beautiful move here. Queen to d3. Look at that. Taking control of the b5 square, the a6 square, defending the e4 complex in our own camp. Black plays knight to e8, probably trying to bring his knight in here to c7 in order to challenge our control of this complex. And again, we want to occupy this colour complex, and of course one of the moves that springs to mind is knight to b5, attacking the c pawn, occupying the colour complex and seeking to attack the squares of the opposite colour. Black would like to swap it off, but of course there is no defence. We simply take the pawn on a7, and we will of course plan to bring our knight back, advance this pawn and put real pressure on Black's position. So going back to the starting position, we had a look at the d5 complex. We saw that it was particularly weak on its base squares, and we only needed creative ways in order for us to exploit that particular complex. And we saw that advancing the pawn a6 did that. The pawn advanced, and this entire colour complex on the queen side became weak. So hopefully you found that beneficial. I'm going to stop it there, otherwise I'll lose concentration, and we'll do another one on how to create weak colour complexes.